Hi, I'm Katy Hornaday, CEO of an ad agency called BarkleyOKRP, and this is Tell Me Everything. I became a CEO in the spring of 2025, right when our industry feels more unpredictable than ever before. Tell Me Everything is a series of candid conversations with leaders about navigating pressure, pivots, and change in real time, and about replacing isolation with honesty and community. Because the truth is, we're all just figuring it out together. Welcome to our final episode of Tell Me Everything. In episode 6, I really wanted to take a step back and think about what I'd learned over this little journey of ours. And one of the themes that continued to come out with all of the leaders that I talked to this season was that the concept of it's lonely at the top is not a concept that you necessarily have to buy into. It really inspired me to believe that this lonely leader idea is not something that we have to believe in. And so with that, I thought about who I'd like to talk to in this final episode, and I was so thrilled when these two guests said yes. First is Shelley Zalis, the founder and CEO of the Female Quotient, and we have Christy Hiler, owner and CEO of Cornett and the co-founder of Own It. Welcome to Tell Me Everything.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, of course. I'm so thrilled. So we're going to dive right in because there's a lot that I want to cover today. And so I'm going to start with you, Christy. And I want to hear about just really how did you get to founding Own It?
Sure. So it was shortly after I bought this agency, I just started asking the question, how many other female agency owners are there? I was in the process of getting certified through WeBank. And through that, I knew that there were 20,000 agencies in the US. And so I just kept going like, okay, where are my people? And nobody could give me an answer. And eventually 4A's gave me a list that had 200 agencies that they knew were owned by women. And I said, thank you. I will not be accepting this. That is incredibly disappointing because 40% of businesses in general are owned by women, less than 1% of advertising agencies. I really hoped that it was just because nobody was tracking it. And so that was really how Own It started. I have a great web team here at the agency. And I said, let's just make it easy. Let's just get a real count. Let's build a site. And if you are a female agency owner of any percentage, it doesn't have to, like WeBank, you have to be 51% or more. Any percentage of ownership is ownership. So female agency owners, just raise your hand, just get on this list and let's get a real count. And that's how Own It started, but it has grown into so much more from there.
I have to ask a question because this infuriates me. And when something infuriates me, it's when I push go and
totally
fix, which is exactly what you did. You looked at possibility, not of what's wrong, but what could be. And so I was moderating a panel with people that run the certification, women-owned certification from WeBank to WeConnect. And I just asked a question, which was, well, what percentage of procurement dollars go to women-owned supply chain? And they sat there and they just said, oh, less than 1%. And I'm like, less than 1%? I'm sorry, 1%, 99%. That's a mic drop moment. And I dropped the mic, boom, loud boom. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm probably your worst enemy right now by raising the flag, but I'm your best friend because we're going to fix it.
Yes.
I said, if there are all these businesses out there that we are certifying, what is the issue? And so I had to dig into the issue, which is why I wanted to talk about Own It. It's so perfect to me because, the issue is visibility. We need to make the invisible visible, number one. And number two, it's legacy, that these other companies have had the business. And so there's really no opportunity for new entries into the arena. And if you don't have access, you can't get the experience. If you can't get the experience, you can't get the capital. So we need to flip that model on its head. So I'm so excited and delighted to be here with both of you to get to it and fix it.
I love that. I love that you said when something makes you mad, you know that you need to fix it. And I think that's like an amazing driver. Was there anything in the early days that was like the initial thing that pissed you off, Shelley, that made you know you needed to found the female quotient?
We talk about only and lonely. I was the only female CEO top 25 in market research my whole life. I knew I was different. I thought differently. I acted differently. I broke every rule that made no sense, hence my nickname, Chief Troublemaker, to create the new ones. And it's not that what was then was wrong. It's just that women weren't in business then, and we didn't write the rules around the primary caregiver. And so I had to start my own company so that I could write my own rules, create the playbook where you don't miss the moments that matter, no regret policy, that you create community. I didn't have office space of whose office was bigger than whose. One of the agencies had open space where I said, wow, I love that. You come in, you take whatever desk is open. So I just implemented that. And I think it was when I was told I'm not the right one. It's not the right time. I'm not going to succeed. And I thought to myself, well, how would these people ever know if they never did it before? Like, why are they telling me what might or might not work if it's never been done? And so that always was this scary, but own it moment for me that I had to follow my heart, not my head. And then when I sold my company to Ipsos, I was once again one of two women on a board of 26, a publicly traded company, and I had 250 employees. They had 16,000. I was doing 60 million profit revenue. They were doing 2.6 billion. I operated in 6 cities, even though I was global because I was online. They operated in 83 countries. I'm sitting in my first board meeting, and they're moving my employees around like chess pieces. And tears came down my eyes, and I was pulled aside after the board meeting. And I was told there's no room for emotion, in the boardroom. And it was that moment once again where I said, do I listen to my head, which is they just bought me, be a good girl, or do I do what I did, which was give a speech to thousands? And it was called Bring Emotion to the Boardroom, ! Pink heart, pink heart, pink heart. And that was that. And it was just, again, another important, monumental change moment for me where I realized women aren't broken. Empathy isn't broken. The workplace is broken. And it wasn't intentionally broken. It just was never rewritten for today's modern workplace. And so that was a pivotal moment for me. I mean, I've had several, but that was a big one. And that's hence how the female quotient was born.
I think it plays to this idea that I've found in my career, which is there is a playbook that has been played out for us that typically doesn't look like the way that we operate. And so it's really easy to feel like we're doing it wrong. And I think that can give you sort of imposter syndrome. That can make you feel like you are messing up the job that you were given or that you earned. What is like your advice when both of you, when you sort of find yourself going like, that's not the way to do it, but it's really based on rules that were never written for you? Like, how do you fly in the face of that? Christy, do you want to start and then Shelley?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think some of that just comes really natural to me, like to just to go, that doesn't fit me. I can't do that, but I can do what I believe is right. And I can see if that can also work. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it can't work. And so the second part of Own It and what has come, and I think is as important as having a real count, is the podcast and the sharing of the stories, the journeys of those that are owners and how did they get there? Because for me, what was holding me back and initially I came to the problem thinking, is it capital? Like, what is the barrier to ownership? Why? How could it possibly be such a huge gap between 40% in general and then less than 1% in advertising agencies? But a big thing is honestly just the confidence. And a lot of that is because we don't see it. We don't see other women doing it. So to your point, Shelley, about visibility, that's why we do the podcast, so that other women in this business can hear how women are coming to it. And the most amazing thing about it is there are a million ways to do this. There's not one way to do it. There's not one definition. There's not one success. There are so many successes, and it is up to you, especially, and that's the brilliance and the power that comes in ownership. You get to define it. You get to set the terms and say, this is what I'm working towards. And it doesn't have to be what you're working towards. And this is how I'm going to do it. And the only way I can be successful is to do it in a way that's true to me. And it was tough for a long time because I knew I could do it differently. That I did have the confidence in. But in this business, it's hard to know if doing it differently will lead to success, which is crazy because this is a creative industry, right? Like it was almost like, and still is mind-boggling to me that we are in a creative industry and there is such a lack of creativity in how we are approaching business. But what I came to learn and what I want more women in this business to know is you can do it differently. You can do it your way, and you can be even more successful when you do that.
It's a really interesting concept of do it differently because people think, oh, I'm supposed to do it the way it was done before. But if that's the case, then change, evolution, innovation, growth, scale can never happen if you're just repeating the same thing over and over. And, I always say there's those two types of people, those that see what they see, status quo. And we do need that. And then there are those that see possibility. And seeing possibility, you got to be the first to push a button and do something differently. And it might not work. I mean, look how many times Edison and Einstein, tried to do their thing and didn't get it right out of the gate. But it's where opportunity lives. The difference between different and same is opportunity.
Determining whether something works or doesn't work, there's not one metric for that. You can find success in so many different ways too. And we don't have to be measured all the same. So don't put that on you. Things can be not just one way either. I mean, oftentimes I have found things are both working and not working.
And the best part is we share so others can learn from it and not have to make, I would say, I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. Make new ones, but not the same ones.
Well, and I think, Christy, what you're saying, though, is defining your own success metrics that maybe look different, because there is a little bit of a tension in if you have the opportunity to be someone who can break a trend and create a new pattern, like you said, Shelley, but you feel a lot of weight to also be successful in it. And so I love the idea of being able to define new success metrics so you're not only being measured by the same, because I remember coming in to my role, I felt more weight becoming a CEO of an agency as a woman because I felt like I had to also do it for other women and do it for, and success was something that felt like it was the only way to know if I was doing it right. What are personal success metrics that you hold yourself to that are maybe different than others would, Christy?
Oh, a lot of it is the team. What do they want to do? And how am I creating opportunities for them to be able to do that? That is success for me. Also creating a space that isn't just about me. I mean, a lot of what you wanted to talk about was not doing it by myself. I don't want all of the glory and all, of the attention for me. I don't want all of it by myself. I don't want to do this by myself, nor do I think that leads to a healthy company. I mean, sustainable companies are those that are built on more than one person. So me understanding what does my team want to do? And then, okay, well, here, let's build what we need to build in order for us to go and be able to achieve that. And then it's the same even in this industry. What do we want to be building? What do we want this industry to look like? Okay, understanding and gathering enough people together to be able to go and do that and know who can lead which part of it. But again, I mean, I love this business. I've always loved this business. I love it more now. I mean, and I've been in it for so long. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm more energized just because I feel like anything could come at me and there's people that I can turn to. And I feel like the same would be true. Anybody that's faced with something, they now have a place they can go to and get answers and get support and have people around them, which just makes it more fun. That's also why we're in this business too, I think.
Yeah. And I think I would say, so Shelley, when we did prep for this, you had this great call out. I was talking about female leaders and you said, I'm going to make you mad. I don't think it's just women. And I want to talk about that, but you define it as a conscious leader. And I want to talk about what's the blueprint of a conscious leader. But I think even in this conversation, you're starting to see the sketch of what that looks like. So do you have a way that you define it, Shelley? And kind of what was the moment when you decided it's not women, it's something bigger than that?
Change only happens when we're all in it together. And so, to me, a conscious leader, and that's why I say I get sick of terminology when we say, oh, we need male allies. Or you think about expressions, behind every great man is a great woman. All those things already set your mind to believing that you are secondary and that you're not enough by yourself to drive change. I need a male ally. Or even the word empower. We don't talk about male empowerment, but we talk about female empowerment. And if you look up the word empower, it means someone gives you power. And I think we all are Dorothy with ruby slippers. We could click our heels and we could go home. We don't need permission, but we are groomed, trained, consistently to think that we need that, because that's the language that we keep using and perpetuating that forward. And so my moment was just realizing it is about people in positions of power to give others access, to bring them up, to create the change and give them that seat at the table. You have to then make it and be talented enough to be there, but it's about power for access. And that's a conscious leader. You have choice, priority, and if you are conscious, you are aware of what you need to be doing. And so I always say, I'll make you conscious. I actually hate the word unconscious bias. It's unconscious bias. If it's unconscious bias and you're saying it, you're conscious. And once you're conscious, you have a choice, do something or don't. And so when you look at conscious leaders, it's not about women supporting women. Yes, that is important to have girlfriends and to share lived experience. And if there's a primary caregiver that's a man, he can share lived experience of how do you do it all? How do you have work-life balance? It is about that lived experience community of sharing and caring and being able to learn from one another. But that's a conscious leader. I don't care if you're a man or a woman. If you're in a position of power, use that power to lift others up. And there are plenty of amazing conscious leaders. And just because you're a woman doesn't mean you're one. And just because you're a man doesn't mean you're one.
I got to sit in the Own It conference a few months back, and I think you can feel a room full of conscious leaders that are really leaned in, and you've seen that collection up close, Christy, over the last few years. What would you say is like most surprising to people about the way that those CEOs and owners operate?
I would say how vulnerable, how willing they are to share the real, because again, like things aren't one way or the other. They're often both. I mean, things can be really hard, and we need to be able to share that with each other. And when you do that, when you are willing to put some things out there, other people are too, and you'll find that it creates this space for people to show up as they are, like exactly as they are, and be met, right there. And I think that community is really special. And I think it was kind of bubbling under the surface, and we just peeled back this one layer, and it just like was like, bah! People didn't know that they needed it until it was there. And now it's just like, I had no idea we could do this. I had no idea that I could be, in this position, which typically you do feel like, and it's been said so many times, the higher up the mountain you go, the fewer the people. But that's not my experience. That has not been my experience because of this community, because I feel like there's so many people that will be real with me, that'll get into the real, that will share openly and not protectively. It looks different in there. And it's interesting because, and I think some of it all works together, like the podcast helps people get to know the people. And so when they do meet in person, it's almost like they know each other, and people go deep so fast in the conversations that own it, and you feel like you can walk up to anybody and talk to anybody and be met with, just openness and a desire to just lock arms. And I had never found that. But that's how I operate. And I think operating like that allowed other people to operate like that.
If we all collectively are seen, heard, and we can reflect the power of we, not the power of me, not the power of you, but the power of we, that is what makes this community. Not that you defined who's in this community, but that community finds each other because it is built on the premise of kindness, on life stage accommodation, on empathy, on vulnerability. I wrote this down because I love what you wrote on sharing the real. And you can only share the real if you've been there, done that, to give. People talk about advice. It's not a textbook. It's this.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what creates culture, a culture of real. And then that's the culture of where people want to stay, where people feel they belong, where people feel seen, where people feel heard, and where, they can have a no regret policy. They never have to look back and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda, if you live your life in real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that.
And I think like the real idea is so fascinating to me in this industry in particular. This is something I've been thinking a lot about, which is we are in an industry where reputation is everything. And there is a lot on the line, to be honest, about where you are. And so you kind of end up looking around, and in a lot of places, you're not sure what is the real and what are sort of like lies to protect where a brand is, where a leader is, where an organization is. And so it can sometimes feel like unclear, who are you, who can you look up to, where you can get the real. And so can you look back on a time where you were like, wow, someone really got honest and vulnerable and opened up to an entire group in a way that maybe started to pull some of that down?
By far. And Katy, you were there, so I mean, the most impactful and memorable conversations that we have at the Own It Summit are those where people are sharing the real. Because the thing is, like, when things get hard, people feel like they've done something wrong. They feel so alone, like the feelings that creep in. I don't want people to feel like that. And we're so intentional about putting people out there and saying, would you be willing? I know your story, because we've created these spaces where they can share, but would you be willing to share that with other people? Because people need to see that. They need to hear that this happened to you and this happened to you, and that because it's going to happen. Hard is going to happen. We're all going to hit it. And when it happens, you don't have to feel alone or like you've done something wrong. It is expected. And those are the stories where people do get up and they share about losing both a life partner, but also a business partner, losing business, hitting hard times, losing your biggest client. Those are the ones where immediate connections are formed with the people. And what is so interesting to me is when you put that out there, what you open yourself up to, I mean, people will respond to that, and they do. And you then have these beautiful connections and beautiful relationships that lead to so many things that you could never even imagine. So it's worth it. And I think that there's so much power in doing it. And when people start to see that, more of it comes.
Absolutely. And I think you kind of nailed it. There is an open room where people share stories really broadly. And then there is the one-to-one connection of women that you can get really, really honest with. Say that you're someone who's really young in this industry or in any industry, and you want to find a woman who you can look to, or just any other conscious leader that you want to be able to connect with and have really open and honest conversations with. Have you had anybody approach you to be their mentor, or do you have any advice for ways that you think when you are sort of coming up that you can intentionally find someone who you can start to foster this type of environment with? Let's start with you, Shelley.
To me, it's probably my greatest joy to be able to give back with generosity what I wish I had my whole career. So I spend a lot of time every week giving advice based on my lived experience. I am not a coach. I am not a counselor, but I do have lived experience, which is, in my opinion, golden nuggets of wisdom of, been there, done that. And so I do help women all over the world. But it's in the moment. I say the best advice is mentorship in the moment. I don't need to stay with that person for a year. I would never be able to help people if I did that. So, someone will call me with a challenge they have, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's from my experience, I can help. And if I don't know how to help, I'll say I'm not the right person to ask, but call my girlfriend. She'll be happy to take your call.
Yeah, and I would say to women in any industry all over, just ask. Ask for what you need. Ask for help. Never be afraid to ask questions of anybody. And I think that I would say go to women, go to men, go to anybody with just don't be afraid to not know and to reach out. And also I would say just be curious and interested about people. It is insane to me how many brilliant people there are all around me every single day, and just showing an interest, asking, get out of your own head and just get to know people. You will learn and you will grow, and even just showing that interest eventually will open the door when you do have a need. You don't always have to have a need to get to know people, but just talk to people and get comfortable doing that.
Final question. I would love to hear from the two of you. It's a question I've asked every guest this season, which is, what's the one thing you're still figuring out?
Collaboration, kindness, sharing. How do we be better at that? I keep creating bigger and bigger and bigger spaces so that all of us inside realize we should all be under one roof together. Bring your meetings, bring your people, and we're one massive community, not splintered.
Christy?
How to be better every year. I hope every year to be able to look back and almost be embarrassed, by where I was, or the things that I thought I love to grow. I love to know. I love to learn. And it's I feel like people and experiences every year. I just want to continue to grow and to be better and to do better.
Thank you for bringing us together. This was amazing.
See you soon. Bye. This has been an incredible season. I have loved every one of these conversations, and I knew going into this that these would be enlightening and inspiring, but what I didn't realize would be that while the playbook for being a CEO is actively being rewritten right now, each of these conversations led me to a bit of a blueprint for where we're headed. When I talked to Kristen, she really enlightened me to this idea of fear, not as a barrier, but fuel for courage. Megan reminded me that as a leader in our industry, one of the most important things we can do is really protect that creativity. Nikki showed me the profound power of leading with empathy, humanity, and zero ego. For Asmir, I will never forget this concept of living in your home energy. And finally, Nicole, the powerful lesson that without risk, there is no growth. Which brings me back to Shelley and Christy. If this season has taught me anything, it's that leadership doesn't have to be Lonely Island. We are better, sharper, and stronger when we lead together. And so thank you all for listening, for leaning in, for messaging me when you found something inspiring along the way, and for letting these incredible women tell me everything.